Session 3. Footprints at Night. Thinking himself hidden from view, Belissimo kept watch on the tower's front door for any sign of those mysterious footprints, or who might have made them, and waited for Laremy to rouse the rest of the group. He almost jumped out of his skin when two dwarves appeared in front of him from thin, frigid air. After they shouted some very intimidating words in what he presumed was Dwarvish, Belly realized he wasn't as hidden as he had thought. Both dwarves doubled in size. Belissimo, correctly assuming that he was outmatched, decided he'd better go check on Laremy's progress. After giving the dwarves the slip, he found the rest of the party. There was much discussion on how to approach the problem of these now giant dwarves, and ultimately they decided on diplomacy. There was a little too much discussion, as it turned out. By the time they returned to the tower, there was no one in sight. They approached cautiously, as Belissimo had warned them about the dwarves' ability not only to double in size, but also to teleport. Or move really fast?
What do you mean teleport or move really fast?
Ripper asked, ever curious about strange abilities and how to replicate them.
Well, they weren't there 1 second and then they were. Either they moved so fast I couldn't see them, or they just appeared. That's teleportation, right?
Ah, invisibility, Ripper concluded, confirming what everyone but Belly was already thinking.
People can do that? Magic is amazing!
Finding no resistance, speedy, invisible, or otherwise, they searched the tower, and Laremy found a crumpled note and a chunk of what they would later discover was chardolin, a rare stone with strange magical properties.
"It's to a Prince Nildar from Durgig,"
Laremy read, his words reverberating from the walls of the ruined spire.
"It says, 'The tail section is almost complete. We need more black shards. The next wild shipment should provide us quite a haul. These ice druids have been useful for gathering the resources we need.'"
It being late and the night cold, everyone returned to the inn. They tried to retrace their steps the next morning, but the wind and snow had completely erased them. Luckily, they could see the tower from the inn. Arriving at the tower, they realized that without the dwarves' footprints, all they had to go on was a note, an empty tower, and their memories, leaving another mystery unsolved. They decided instead to set out for East Haven to meet up with Dazan as originally planned. The party arrived in East Haven to quite a scene. The town square was packed with angry, shouting East Havians. All they could see, piercing the sky above the townspeople's heads as they approached the throng, was a hastily constructed wooden frame. A gallows. Having heard stories of human sacrifice as an attempt to appease Oral the Frost Maiden and bring back the sun, they began to push their way through the crowd, anxious to get to the center before the townspeople did something rash. They faced little resistance, although as they got closer to the gallows they noticed another disturbance in the crowd. Not far from them, but moving closer. It seemed as though someone was trying to reach them. They reached the clearing around the gallows, Murdan leading the way. He came to an abrupt stop as he pushed past the last of the townspeople. There before him was Dazan, dangling below the crude gallows platform. As Ripper, Belly, Larry, and Kelly stepped clear of the crowd, they were each rooted to the ground as though entangled, though no conjuration was present. None of them had been particularly close to Dazan, but a hanged man with a familiar face is an unsettling sight, not to mention that they were now implicated with someone who had done something egregious enough to warrant public execution. Those wearing their Arcane Brotherhood pins quietly removed them.
"Ah, Dazan!"
came a voice from their right, breaking the hushed silence that had fallen over the crowd when the corpse had stopped thrashing. The voice had come from a tiefling who had just stepped clear of the crowd as they had. Kelagor, glancing back, realized that this must have been the person pushing through the crowd towards them.
"Do you know him?"
Belissimo asked, rushing over to the tiefling.
"I do. I worked with him,"
she said, glancing around to see if anyone was paying attention. Fortunately, a hanged corpse draws the eye.
"Dazan was convicted of murder and given a public execution. His belongings were taken from the inn and put in the library. We should find somewhere a little more private
to talk. I'm Belissimo. I know who you are, the tiefling interrupted, giving Belly a withering look. Now follow me before we draw too much attention. After finding a more secluded area, the tiefling turned to them. I am Damaia, she began. Damaia explained that she had been sent by Valin, who had also sent Dazan. Damaia had been sent to find Dazan's parties and bring them back to her in Bryn Shander. She was able to overcome the party's misgivings and convince them to join her to come to Bryn Shander to meet with Valin. The meeting with Valin did little to assuage their distrust of the Arcane Brotherhood. She was staying at the Northlook as one would expect. It was her traveling companions that gave them pause. There were 2 undead kobolds in her room who seemed completely obedient to her will. Valin explained to them that she was in charge of the expedition and would be taking over assigning them work. When asked about the fallen Netheril city, she mentioned that there are rumors of something in the lost city that might help the Dale, but their best bet at finding it would be through her. They also asked about the murders in 10 towns, but Valin said that she didn't much care about that. The last she'd heard of was in Targus. She suggested they visit Tourmaline, where something strange seemed to be happening in the mines. She also offered an alternative, an investigation of the old Frost Druid temple north of Lonelywood. The party decided on Tourmaline as it was the first one offered. Most everyone retired or went shopping. Kelagor went searching for magic items, while Laremy sought out another blade. Belissimo, unsettled by Valin's indifference to the murders, waited for Laremy to return from shopping to speak privately, to share his misgivings and make sure he wasn't the only one on guard should that callousness turn out to be a sign of something more sinister.